Oh, good morning. It's Wednesday. Some date, somewhere in November, I think. And it's, we're going to call that 8 o'clock. Kevin's over here working on the right side of the bike. Going to take the timing cover off so we can send it to AMR and get the modification done, the anti-drain down modification done. I've pretty much got the wiring all hooked up here. These are primarily interpole wires. We'll cap those off and put them aside. I've got a little bit of work in here to do because I want to make darn sure I wired in the kill switch. Woke up last night thinking, I wonder if I did that properly. So I'll do that this morning. Then we'll start testing the electrical system. I refer to that as smoke testing. We hook up the battery and see what smokes. Oh, well, usually not that much. Usually. Yeah. On the other hand, when I do smoke testing, the first electrical testing, I use a 7.5 amp fuse. By the way, if you've read in your documentation that these bikes use a 35 amp fuse, they don't. That's a 35 amp British fuse, and we've seen them. They're marked two different places. One says 35 in a great big writing, and underneath it says 17 amps. So these things come from the factory with a 35 marked fuse. That's really a 17 amp fuse, which is just slightly larger than an American 15 amp fuse. And I always install 10 amp fuses in these bikes, and 10 amps supports the bikes just fine. If you stick a 35 amp fuse in there, believe me, if you have a short circuit, the whole wiring harness will burn up before that 35 amp fuse will blow. So don't believe the way the books are written calling for 35 amp fuses. They don't use 35 amp fuses. I use 10 amp fuses and carry a few spares anyway. So that's where we are. I'll show you over here. These are wiring diagrams that I scanned out of the book, and then I enlarged them, and then I simplified them. And I marked all the color codes by hand, so instead of just having the little symbols, you've actually got writing, as in, brown, green, brown, blue, yellow. So much easier to read. This is the second half. I'd cut it in half is what I did. This actually goes like this. This is the front half of the bike here, and the back half of the bike here, and this is the complete bike, somewhat simplified, taking out the interpole circuits. So, helps a whole lot, believe me. All right, it's going up to the clock on the wall. It's 10 o'clock. Cool, we've been on it for a couple hours. Kevin's going to do a demonstration here. We're going to demonstrate the whole electrical system. He's going to turn the ignition on, and we're tapping into the ignition wire, and now he's going to press the kill switch, and we kill the ignition. So that's the top button on the left side on this bike. The early bikes had buttons in strange places. So we got ignition there. All right. So now with the ignition on, you can go ahead and pull it in. Thank you. With the ignition on, let's do the horn, which is cleverly hidden over on this side, I believe. Yep, okay. So we've got ignition and horn. We've got brake light. You do this. All right, do the pedal. Tail light's on, okay. And go ahead up there. Good, brake light. And headlights are on. And I think the high beam, low beam's on that side, Kevin.
On this side?
Yeah. Yep, high beam and low beam. Do it back and forth. There you go. Good. High beam, low beam. Indicators are up here. Should have a high beam indicator. There it is. Okay. That's pretty much the whole electrical system. We're going to do something now. I'll show you. Oh, also, this is the 7.5 amp fuse that I use for testing. When I have the old style fuses, I put this in place. It's just a fuse with 2 clips hooked to it. For when I have the inline glass ones, I can test with this rather than blowing up a lot of expensive inline glass fuses. This is the LED that was in the high beam, low beam. It doesn't work because it's a negative ground LED. I had LEDs in stock, so I put one into the high beam, low beam. Here's the timing cover. We've taken the seals out, cleaned it all up, and we'll do a little hand polishing when we get it back. And the oil pump. These are going to go to AMR today. It'll take about 10 days for him to turn those 2 around with his modifications made, and we'll put it back on. We're going to do a little demo here. These 2 wires aren't needed, so if you'll grab this, Kevin, and I'll show how we cap off unused wires. Now, I cap off unused wires because electrics are a big mystery, and people get a little upset when they see wires hanging out in the breeze and wondering, well, what are they doing, or why are they doing, or what should I do? So all I've done here is take a piece of shrink tubing and flip it over to hook the 2 wires together. And I'm going to now shrink it down nice and tight. And now I'm going to show you the trick that we do just to show people that this is completely unused wiring. And I didn't get it hot enough. Don't you hate it when a demo doesn't work? Okay, that'll hold. All right, so anyway, that shows them that it's not used. I'll show you 2 other places where we did this up here. These are nicely capped and squeezed. And that pretty well indicates that these wires are not used. It's just a neat way of capping off unused wires so that you don't cause any trauma, pain, or questions to the next guy. Everything's wired up. These are the 2 wires that go down to the magnetic pickup. We'll do that when we put it back together. I could put the tank back on the bike right now, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it off until we're ready to button it completely up. So at this point, we've got an electrical system that seems to work pretty good. And I'm going to park the bike now while I order parts and get back to it when the parts come in. Good enough. Thank you.